Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love and Life Elevated. I love that new title, honey. That was so well done.
Hello, I'm Deborah Rouse.
I am James Rouse, and today's topic is something I think a lot of us could use a lot of work on. I'm saying that personally because this is an area that I seldom don't have challenges, and I seldom don't have a lot of good work to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it's kind of cliche. You know how I'm weird about, I don't like to be too cliche, but this is a really important subject. And I didn't tell you I wanted to do this, but I want to do this. And it's like digging into the archives of boundaries with you and I. And it's going to take us way back to when we were in school together.
Oh, gosh.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have no idea. But today's topic is boundaries, and I'm really psyched. What is it, honey?
Okay, so just to set the stage, James and I, once we were together dating, we were together, and we started living together, and then we're together 24/7 because that's what school required of us. And from school we were studying, and then we were involved in a restaurant and baking, and we really had zero alone time. Now, the boundary part is kind of funny. So we're in school, and this is probably third year when we started getting into all the ologies.
Oh.
So think gynecology, proctology, urology, gastroenterology. And probably because we're at naturopathic medical school, there wasn't a huge budget in terms of hiring models to practice your skills on. And
I didn't think you were going to go here.
Okay, I'm not going to go into the dirty detail. Let your imagination go wild on this, but let's just say that it was really interesting because one of the things about boundaries, there's like so many layers, but there's, intimacy, friendship, time boundaries. There's so many, business and boundaries and work. But I was thinking how, first of all, I was pretty young, when we were first together. We were in school, and
how old were you, sweetheart?
24 when we met.
24
when we married. But I think just from childhood, I didn't have a good boundary setting barometer, mostly because I wanted everyone to like me and I wanted everyone to be mad at me if I spoke up for something. But there were certain lines, I think, because we were in an intimate relationship, that boundaries that blurred this interesting line between, what we wanted to be learning and being awesome at for a profession, but also preserving the intimacy in our relationship. And that was probably, looking back, my first introduction, even though I needed to set boundaries way before that in friendships and family and everything like that. But I thought about that this morning when I knew we were going to talk about boundaries. I was like, oh man, imagine if I was a healthy boundary setter back then, and you as well, because you know why. But anyway,
you know why.
Crossing boundaries, it's really just not great for your mental, emotional health, your psyche, your confidence. So I'd like to kind of dive into that and talk about different layers of boundaries, how we've gotten better, how it's impacted our relationship, our work.
Yeah, I mean, my goodness, honey, I think, and I didn't know that story was coming up. It's a great story. And I think for a lot of us, particularly who are living in this interesting time where boundaries are not just critical, they are for our own survival. They just literally helps us to survive. And I think for people who may have roles in their younger life, if you will, back in their childhood, I am a middle child. I grew up in a family that had a lot of really deep challenges with boundaries. And as a middle child and the triggering that I went through, I just wanted to make everyone get along. I would give myself away. I would give my peace away to want to steward our family surviving, which it didn't survive. And I remember taking that on as a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid, where I thought if I was just this perfect kid, my dad wouldn't leave. I thought as a perfect kid, my mom and dad would finally get along. And wow, I didn't even... And I think there's a lot of that carries into our adulthood. If we're just perfect, then everyone's going to like us, and we'll give ourselves away and give ourselves away. And I think eventually, hopefully, we start to learn about the power of self-preservation. Prentice Hemphill, who I learned about through Brene Brown, once said, boundaries are the way in which I can love you and love me all at the same time. And I think that is a powerful way to introduce today's topic, because boundaries are about loving yourself, but also loving others in such a way that you can coexist.
Oh, totally. And I think that you nailed it when you said it was a survival thing for you. And I was thinking of how healthy relationships, whether it's intimate, business, friendships, they really can't survive without healthy boundaries. And I love the quote that you just shared, and my memory is not fantastic, but you did one of your beautiful Instagram quote writings on boundaries. Do you remember what it was? We'll think about it as time goes, or we'll share it in the link. But you've always shared some really beautiful things, and I think when you aren't setting boundaries, I can think of examples in our relationship and examples in my work where I wasn't setting them for myself, and it was building resentment that I had for you, even though it was totally me not setting boundaries, because I worried that if I did set a boundary that, I don't know, like that you wouldn't love me as much, or it wasn't okay for me to set that boundary.
Or I might even be offended, right? Like you were pushing me away because of my childhood issues about like needing to be needed was my big one. And I would give myself away. So if you laid a boundary, I was like, oh my gosh, am I not doing a good job in rescuing you? Am I not doing a good job in being your person? Because don't you want me all the time? And these are really, I've learned over time working with a lot of patients, working with couples, this is something that happens to a lot of us just based on origin stories, childhood stories.
Totally. And, you know, our work together continued through school. We spend a lot of time together. And I'm not just talking COVID where we were forced to be together, but we naturally do a lot of work together and we enjoy spending time together. It's pretty easy. But sometimes, like, I definitely am a person who loves my space. I love to be able to go for a walk and listen to a book or a podcast or whatever. And so there's sometimes where there's a day where I'll be like, hey, I'm gonna head out for a walk. And you say, great, I'll come. And I'm always like, and I love that about you, that you want to do it, but I've had a hard time saying, oh, okay. Or like, this was just gonna be a me time walk. And I have said that, and you're fine. But I'm so scared to like say, this is just really, not that I'm needing personal space from you in particular. It's just like me time. And I have a hard time just saying, this is just a me time walk. But you're good. I'm getting better.
Yeah. And I think so for anyone who's listening and going, oh my gosh, that's the same for me, or a former relationship, something I want to work on for the next relationship, or the one I'm presently working on. Sometimes it's a big step for a lot of people. And I often coach people around the whole idea, well, if that seems like, whew, that's big to get started, you can start looking at just doing things, how you kind of, build little worlds of boundaries in your everyday life. A big one for me is social media. And because I've had challenges where I love to engage with every single one of the people who make comments, and I want to share, I want to make sure they know that I care, because I do. And sometimes that can get in a place where I think that can lead into all of a sudden we're just spending time reading other things and seeing some political things. And all of a sudden we've gone from being in a really good mindset, really positive, very loving. And all of a sudden you start feeling, oh my gosh, I'm now starting to feel like my guard is coming up, and I'm starting to feel like I'm judging, and I'm starting to feel fear, and I'm starting to feel sadness. And we have to be really, really clear. I have a saying that I give myself often, decorate your life well. And that really kind of look at your room almost like your life is a room. And what do you place in that room? Things that are beautiful predictably, things that give you peace predictably, people that you feel align with values. So you got to guard your room, and you got to really establish boundaries in your room so you don't allow, because it's really by choice, right? In social media, a lot of it is by choice that we allow certain energies and certain people and certain things to come in and sit in our room. And when they do that, our room becomes crowded sometimes in ways that we don't like it. And then we see our own self-confidence, our own self-esteem, our own peace start to erode from there. So these are areas I think we can begin and look at every single day. Where am I putting my time, and how do I allow myself to invite in energies that I have no control over, or what can I do to establish that control to create more of a pristine and peaceful environment?
That's so great. I'm so glad you talked about social media, because even if within yourself you set a boundary of where it can be time. Okay, so I'm only doing X amount of minutes per day, or I'm only doing it at this time of day. I think that's key. I'm only going to engage on this kind of subject matter, because I think what can happen is then if you don't set boundaries, you get taken advantage of. And then again, for me, the emotion that builds is resentment, but I have to take responsibility for, like, well, what was my part in that? I kind of allowed that because I didn't set a hard boundary. But I was thinking of another great boundary that, you know, if you hang out with us or you're in our friend group, there's something that you know about us, and in particular about James, and he's probably shared this, you know, in your treehouse talks, but he's an early riser and he is an early to bed at night person. And so two things about that hard time thing. Number one is, like, don't call after 6:30 p.m. Like, you're just not going to be engaging on the phone because you've been doing it since 5 a.m. And I love that you set that boundary, like your phone goes on do not disturb. And then the other thing is, like, you know that you have a hard stop for the end of day, and that really it's only unusual circumstances, unexpected circumstances, that are a really great concert that interferes with that.
There's a few people we'll stay up late for, a few people that we will allow ourselves to go to Red Rocks, and all of a sudden it's 11:30 at night. I'm going to go, all right, premeditated bummer tomorrow morning. I'm going to be a mess.
I can name the two artists.
So be Noah Kahan, and Michael Franti.
Yes, I knew it. Okay, Noah Kahan, Michael Franti. Definitely.
Absolutely. I'll stay up all night for you too. Exactly.
Okay, so when we would entertain in the past.
This is so good. So if you ever come to our house for dinner, don't be offended. I've been doing this for years.
But now people know, so it doesn't happen as much. But we would be hosting a few couples for dinner. And at a certain time, I would just notice that James was missing. Like, wait, I thought he just went to use the restroom, and
he's been gone now. He's been gone now for an hour.
And so then we're just socializing downstairs, and then I would go, and he's already crawled into bed. He did the Irish goodbye.
Well, no, I sometimes will even hint strongly. I'll be going, you know, this has been great, guys, but I'm starting to fade. And also, I'll kind of, but some people don't hear you.
But now we set the boundary ahead of time. Like, okay, we're good up until, 7:30. Our dinner reservations are at 5:15, and it could be our age. It could be that we're hanging out with people our age, but most people are totally on board with that. Yeah. And it's like, oh, thank you for giving us permission to not have a late night. And then there's other people who are just late nighters, and it's just not us. But we have, and you have established that boundary to make that so much easier, so that, like, you're respecting yourself, they're respecting the boundary, and it's just made things so much easier. That you don't have to feel bad about the fact that you like to go to sleep early.
I don't. I know. And there was a time that I was, almost embarrassed about it. Or almost like, God, I feel like I had to explain myself going, I'm going to be up at 4 a.m, like literally in 6 hours. That's why I'm going to bed right now. Yeah. And almost having to explain myself about that. But no, I think boundaries have a personal opportunity for everyone. And let's kind of maybe bring this full circle. So questions for everyone here today. When you look at areas in your life where you've got work to do when it comes to boundaries, one of the places I think that's always good to begin is, where does your love need more attention? And is there any areas in your life that you have people or things or experiences that are encroaching on your love or stealing that sense of love and peace and really stepping over that boundary? And I think that there are certain people that we have to kind of get really clear about. I think there are things that we kind of allow ourselves to do that we also have to get very clear about. And one of the most healing things that I'm going to really encourage all of us to consider, and I think, sweetheart, we always want to make sure people know, every topic that we're sharing with you, this is what we're working on too. This isn't like, hey, we're already there. We've crushed this thing. No, we are actively learning about boundaries. And I'd love for all of us to really think about how powerful it is when you have established the type of boundaries that give you predictable peace, that give you a predictability with your purpose, and a predictability with how it is that each and every day you know you will not give yourself away any longer to things that do not serve the highest good in you. That is, to me, what boundaries are really all about. And they can be wicked hard. They can be hard with family members. They can be hard with partners. They can be hard with our work. But I think over time, you start to work on the areas that you know are kind of a little simpler, a little bit easy to work on. And then you start gaining confidence from there. And this whole idea of confidence is beautiful, because once you establish healthy boundaries in some of the smaller, easier areas, you start to feel beautifully controlled in the way it is that you start to establish other ones. And you start to have more self-awareness and self-compassion with that self-awareness. So I really want to invite all of us to consider how much better our life gets, how much lighter and less heavy our life becomes with establishing healthy boundaries.
Yeah, totally. I was thinking of ways in business when you establish a boundary, like, yeah, I don't take meetings after a certain time of day, or I'm not working on the weekends, or I'm only working in the evenings, whatever that is that works best for you and makes you feel like you're on your game, you're focused, and you're going to feel good about it, versus always making exceptions to the rule. That's just when people know they can take advantage of you, and it doesn't make for a fulfilling, long-lasting business relationship. And I see how even, you know, over years and years of private practice, how sometimes I've had a habit of really allowing that patient-doctor relationship to kind of cross boundaries, and I've had to work hard at resetting those boundaries, and it's not easy, but then I feel so much better about the relationship once it's set.
Yeah.
I was thinking about one other, well, there's so many ways to go about it, but you know, there's relationships when you're parenting and what boundaries you set with your kids, because I think if you don't establish them early on, then your kids don't establish them for themselves, right?
And gosh, it's so good, honey. It's so good.
Have less, they're not respecting you as an individual. It's like, oh, well, it's my mom or it's my dad, and so I can just do whatever I want whenever I want. And I've seen both sides of that. And then flip side where we are, and that's the empty nesting. And again, us together, like a lot of times 24/7. So where's that boundary of like alone time, personal space, personal peace? Because personal space is another big boundary area, I would say.
Yeah.
That you know when someone's in that personal bubble.
Close talker. We're the close talker. You know, I'm so glad you brought that up. And one thing I want to leave everybody with is that I had this interesting thought, and it happened just because a couple days ago. So Deb and I, about a decade ago, we established a beverage company called Mix One. It was a tremendous, really cool company. We grew it to coast. It was in thousands of stores, and we work with a lot of professional athletes. It was awesome.
What?
And a lot of the team that we had were people who had come from really big brands, big beverage brands. And the thing I promised them when we did our interviews, I said, you know, you're going to find this to be a very different culture. And they said, well, tell us what that means. I said, number one, I don't do any meetings at night. Zero. We don't take people out for whining and dining. We don't go out and, I mean, I've been sober for decades, so it was easy for me, but I said, guys, I won't put that pressure on you. You have to be entertaining and engaging and selling and marketing after 4. And I said, after 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I want everyone to feel like they go to their families. They can do their own self-care. And I had one of my key, and someone I love so dearly, one of my team members, partners, said to me through social media the other day, I just love the way that you have continued to be authentically yourself. You set boundaries when we were at Mix One. You didn't allow our culture to become a company that was just about making sales at all cost and giving yourself away and burning out. You really, really had the team live the lifestyle that the company wanted to be, which should first and foremost want to be about health and well-being. So maybe a great way to look at this today is like, this is your personal brand. Boundaries are your personal brand. And how people engage with you is based on what you allow people to do with you and what you allow people to come into your space and kind of do what they want to do. So I think from a branding standpoint, thing that you and I've learned in our own relationship, we absolutely protect our brand as a marriage. So, oh my gosh, we have a lot of great friends and a lot of beautiful people have come into our life that we love to spend time with. And we've also lost some people
For sure.
because it wasn't aligning with us. We felt when we spent time with them, our relationship was feeling a little bit more flustered, a little bit more stressed out. And we've learned that we've had to really curate the brand called love, respect, purpose, and peace as the brand of our family. And so if that's something that I think people can really look at in the way they objectify and then subjectively look at their life presently, what kind of people, what kind of experiences, what kind of practices and rituals do you bring into your life that allow you to establish beautifully predictable boundaries? And where is there potential work to do? Because we continue to do this work right alongside of you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it takes courage. It takes vulnerability. And just if it is an area that's challenging for you, I encourage you to start small. If it's 5 minutes of time for you, if it's saying to someone, hey, this is hard for me to say, but I could really use space with X, Y, or Z. Or maybe you're going to start meditating because that has been something that's been a challenge for you, and you just allow others to invade that time and space that you think that you could use for that. Well, put a sign on the door, say 5 minutes, me time, and that's where you can start. Start small, but start now, I would say, and it'll come back to you a millionfold. For sure.
No doubt. Mm-hmm. So that wraps up our show for today. And I just want to leave something, sweetie, I'm going to say it to you. You have been so good for me when it comes to boundaries. You've helped me to see some of the things that I've done for decades with my family that I couldn't even see, that were definitely crossing boundaries. And I was giving myself away and sometimes coming away sad, burned out, angry. And you beautifully have helped me to bring attention to areas of my life that helped me to feel deserving of healthy boundaries, to establish those places so I could protect my heart, because there's a tenderness around my family of origin, and also looking at my present life. So sweetheart, thank you for being a great teacher for me, mentoring that for me, and allowing me to continually evolve in a really beautiful part of a spiritual practice, which is healthy boundaries.
Oh, thank you. You're welcome. And thank you for allowing me to continue to work on it and not judging me when could do a better job at setting a boundary. So thank you for loving me through that process.
It's a privilege, sweetheart. 31 years into this experience and this experiment called us. Yeah. I think we're doing pretty good.
Yep.
I love you.
I love you too.
We love you too, and we hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. We love doing this with you. So share your boundary ideas with us so we can all grow together.
Peace.
Much love. All blessings. Bye for now.